Okay. Yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm trying. Sure. This is not what I want to share. Okay. Refresh. All right. Okay. So I don't know if my mic is on. So yeah, so this is the PHP course or the peer learning, and I'll before I start to talk about the CRUD app, I'd want to do like a crash course on PHP. I'm assuming that we know a little about PHP, and let's say a crash course on it just to juggle our memory will be fine. So that's where I'll start from. I'll start from s a crash course which won't take much of the time. So yeah, so the idea is to have a little crash course on PHP and maybe speed run through some CSS just in case. And then yeah, then we'll take it from there. Okay. So one of the I would say the prerequisites for the CRUD application will be to have PHP installed on your computer and XAMPP also installed on your computer. These two are and also an IDE. These three will be the prerequisites for the course. To get the XAMPP installed, you can basically Google. Okay, let me try to demonstrate how to get that one. All right, you can basically Google XAMPP, and then you come and download XAMPP. So your download will start automatically, or you click here, and then it will start downloading, and then you just follow the steps on the screen to get XAMPP to install. I already have it on my PC, so I would not need to download it again. Yeah, but basically that's the one of the prerequisites for this. And then after installing it, you get an interface that looks like this. And then you start your Apache and your MySQL. Yeah, so that's the prerequisite from there you can get Visual Studio as the text editor. So basically Visual Studio Code as a text editor. So you come and download it as well. And then based on the platform that you are, you choose one and then you install it, and then you follow the steps, and then you are good to go. So from there you need PHP as well. So basically they are just one Google away. So you need PHP. So based on the environment that you are running, you get PHP and then you download it and then you install. So I already have all these on my PC, so I don't need them. Okay, so maybe I'll share my entire screen for a short while, and then I'll show you how what they all look like, and then we take it from there. Give me 1 second. Okay, so yeah, like I was saying, I'll spend less time on it. So basically, I have the XAMPP already installed in the system. This is the XAMPP. I'm running Apache and the MySQL as well. And then I have, so I think if you install XAMPP, I think you don't need PHP installed. Yeah. So all you need is XAMPP, and then you need your text editor. I'm using PHP Storm. PHP Storm is also free as well. So yeah, you can get PHP Storm or you can get Visual Studio Code, and they are both okay. All right. So like I was saying, I'll speed run through the PHP and then we get going with the CRUD application. Okay. So yeah, to speed run through it, after getting your PHP and your XAMPP and your Visual Studio installed, you move on to creating a new file index.php, and then you start from there. So to begin with, I'll basically, like I'm saying, I'll speed run through it. So to declare variables, you use a dollar sign and the name of the variable. So let's say name is equal to Tony. Right. So this is how you declare variable in PHP. You don't add a data type. When you run a PHP, will figure out what data type it is. So name is equal to 20. You can have age is 25. You can have Boolean as well. So let's say height 1.5, and then you have a student, which is true. Yeah, so this is a Boolean value. You can have an array. Let's say, yeah, so great. Yeah, so basically, this is how you declare an array in there. You can also have an null value. So, um, oops. Yeah. Yeah, so this is like how you declare variables in PHP. Basically, this is variable and then the type of data, variable, and the type of data, variable, and the type of data. Yeah. So basically, that's how you declare variables. So from there, I'll move to conditionals. That's if statements. So say if if age is greater than or equal to 18. Then you can have echo. Yeah, you're a minor, you're an adult. Let me turn off my Copilot suggestions so that it doesn't. Okay, so this is a conditional statement. If age is greater than or equal to 18, then you are a minor. Sorry, if age is less than or equal to 18, then you're a minor. If not, then you're an adult. So basically, that's how you do conditionals in PHP. You can also have a for loop for I is equal to 0, I less than 5, and then you have I plus plus. Okay, so for I is equal to 0, I is greater than 5, and then you can echo I. Let's say in a space. Yeah, so basically, that's how you declare conditional a loop. Sorry. So yeah, this is how you declare your loop. Okay, so from there, this is a for loop, and then from there you have a while loop. Basically, if you have done anything programming before, it follows the same structure. I just want to crash through it so that we can get going. Okay, you echo the same thing. All right, then you I plus plus. Okay, so yeah, that's a while loop, that's a for loop, and then I'll end at declaring functions. So to declare a function, you do function greet, and then you pass in your name, and then you can echo or return the string hello. So the dot is basically concatenating your concatenating the strings. Anywhere you see the dot is basically concatenating a string with whatever data type. Yeah, so after that you call greet, you pass in the name, which is let's say Tony. Yeah, so basically that's how you declare a function, that's how you call a function, and yeah. And then this is where I'll end it at, basically. Okay. So then I'll move straight to the building of the CRUD application. All right. So before we build a CRUD application, I'd like to show you what the end will look like. Yeah, so this is what basically we are going to build. We are going to build a task manager. Uh, it fits in all the different things that makes a CRUD. You can create, you can read, you can update, and then you can delete. So you can add a tags. So you say a title of the tags. Title is peer learning, and then the description is this is peer learning about a CRUD application. So you can add the tags and then you have it. You can date it by editing, let's say the state was completed. And then you can also go ahead and delete the tags as a whole. Okay. So to follow along, like I said, you need a text editor, you need XAMPP, and then you need MySQL. So yeah, so those are the things that you need to follow along. All right. So I'll go back to sharing my IDE. Okay. All right. So back to my IDE. So things that we will need the index page. The index page usually is the beginning or the entry to the application usually. So we'll need the index page. We will need another page for the database. So I'll call it db.php. That's where we'll keep our database connection and all of that. Then we have our delete.php, and then we would have our update.php. Okay, so yeah, these are the things that we'll need for now. All right, so anything, to start anything, I'd like to start with the database side. So if you have XAMPP installed, like I said, after opening the interface, you'd get, and I think it would be better if I share my entire screen. Give me 1 second so I don't switch between screens. If I can share multiple screens at the same time. Okay. Sorry, I was having issues sharing my screen. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is that's everything. Does anybody know how I can share multiple screens at the same time? Because I'm having a hard time switching between. Okay. Hmm. So if you have XAMPP installed, this is what you'd see. Uh, you'd have XAMPP, and then when you run the XAMPP application, this is what you see. All right. So the next thing is to have Having hard time switching between tabs. Let me share my entire screen. Okay, I think this will work. So the next thing to do is to have after having XAMPP installed and then running XAMPP, you call XAMPP. Mine is already running, so yeah. So I have XAMPP running here. It's started another instance of it. Yeah, so I have XAMPP running here. Once it's going through the process. So I have XAMPP running there. I have a folder created after installing XAMPP. I have a folder created, and that folder is the XAMPP folder. Now, for me to be able to display the task manager that I displayed, this one, I need to put the folder that code will be in the htdocs. So if I go to the htdocs, you realize that if I go to the XAMPP folder, I realize there's an htdocs file folder, I mean. And then when I go in there, I have various folders here. And each folder here is basically like a public folder. That's like an entry to the code, or let's say the app, basically the PHP app. So I'm using the PHP crash, and this is where I created the different instances of the files. Okay, so that's also what I'm running inside the PHP Storm text editor. All right. So once you have your XAMPP installed, all right. So once you have your XAMPP installed, yeah, this is still running. You can click on admin, and when you click on admin, it will open the PHP my admin for you. Basically, this is where your databases are located. So over here, you create a new database. So we will call our database tax manager. So you come here and then you call it tax manager. Okay. So now that you have the tax manager created here, which is the tax manager, right now it is empty. So since it's empty, what are the things I would want to add into the tax manager? So let's use a query. And then the things I would like to add. So if anybody can give me things that will be added into our tax manager database, or if you are creating a tax manager, what are the things that you think is okay to add into our tax manager database? Hello. Yes, so okay, let me show the tax manager one more time so that we see what the tax manager is on the app browser. Yeah, so this is the tax manager. So what are the things that you think will be part of our database? What are the things that we are basically storing in our database? Anybody can give any suggestions? Okay, so I'll let me go first. I would say
Okay,
we
Tony,
can
once again. So, chemist, Tony, once again, chemist, you wanted to talk. So, if anyone wants to talk, just unmute and go ahead and talk. Tony might not see that you have raised up your hand, so you can just unmute and talk. Thank you. All right, Tony can go ahead. Thanks.
Okay, so like I'm saying, I'll go first. The one thing that we can add into our tax manager based on what we are seeing is we can have an ID of the tax. We can also have a title of the tax. So, uh, yeah. So over here, we can use the MySQL. Basically, we are using MySQL, so we can use a MySQL create table tax. Let's say that's a tax. So we are creating a table in our tax manager database and calling it a tax. Okay. So inside our tax manager database in the tax table, we can add an ID, which is an integer, and then our ID is auto incremented. So every time we create a new tax, our ID is incremented 1, 2, 3. So one is added to the previous ID. Okay. So our ID is also our primary key. Yeah, it's our primary key. I can hear somebody. Is somebody asking a question or? We can use the MySQL. Okay, I think I'm hearing myself. Okay, so now that we have our ID stored in there, the next thing that we can add from our tax manager, if I go back to the tax manager, local. All right, the next thing that we can add is the title of our tax. So we have an ID, which I've added. We have an ID in here. So the next thing we can add is the title of our tax. So what type of data type is a title? If somebody can help. Let's call this tax. Hello, anybody out there?
Variable character. So
You
it
said it's
is
a
varchar.
okay. All right. So our title is a varchar. So we add a title, which is a varchar. And then we keep, let's say, our title can be 255 words, basically. And our title cannot be null. So we can't create a tax without adding a title. Okay. So the next thing that we have is a description, which is also it can be a varchar, it can be a text because our description can be a long text. So we can keep it as a varchar, but I'd prefer we keep it as a text so that it will be long enough for us to add lots of description in there. Okay. Then we have status. So our status is either pending, that our tags have not been started, or our status is completed. So we have pending completed. When you are implementing it, I'd like you to add a third step, maybe to do progress completed. Or I mean in progress. So to do in progress completed. But for this one, we just go with just to that's pending and completed. So our status, which I would like it to be an enum, an enum that says pending and also completed. Okay. And then by default, when we create a new status by default, it is pending. Okay. And then the last thing that I like to add is the time that we created the tag. So created at, it's usually a convention that you add to your database. So it's a timestamp. And then, yeah, by default, when you create it, it's the current timestamp. Okay. So now we have our table in our database, which has an ID, a title, a description, a status, created at. Those are the things that we will store in our database. So I'll just go ahead and hit submit query. Okay. So now we have our tax table in there. Currently, it's empty. We have nothing from tax. So if we run select star from tax, is basically empty. All right. So the next thing that we'll do right now, since we have our tax table, is to initiate a connection between the database and the tax table. Okay. So I think somebody has a message. Say they are unable to. Okay. So yeah. So then now we have our index, DB, delete, and update in there. Okay. So the next thing we'll do is initiate a connection between our database and our app. Okay. So currently we have nothing. Like I said, it's running on PHP crash, which is this folder. It has these files. So if I go to PHP crash in my browser, that's localhost /PHP crash. I think that's the word. Currently it's blank. There's nothing here. So let's see if this is the actual folder that we are in. Yeah, let's echo hello. Okay, so now we have our hello showing up. So basically that's the actual folder that we are in. And yeah, so the echo basically is like print something to the screen. Yeah, so that's the echo. As I'm going to, even though I did a crash course, I'll be explaining one or two things. All right. So now we need to initiate a connection between the database we created and this actual app. Okay. So the database, for us to initiate it, we need some, let's say, some parameters. Okay. We need the name of the server that we are running the database on. So currently we are running it on localhost. So call it server name. Use the server name. And our server name is, our server is currently running on localhost, so it's just localhost. If you deploy it online, maybe you'd have a different server name, but currently it's running on localhost. Okay, so the username,
Hello, sir.
yeah.
Please, about the admin page, how did you access the admin page? I don't know if that's the right word for it, admin page.
Okay, so do you have XAMPP installed already?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when you have XAMPP installed and then you start it, you click on this admin.
Oh, okay, okay.
So when you click on it, it will open the admin page for you, the PHP one admin.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So you need the Apache running and then you need the MySQL running. So you start the two and then you click on the admin and then it will take you there.
All right, I get it now. Thank you so much.
So the username of my database. So my database has a username of root. When I was installing it, they asked me for the username. And I just said root. I currently have no password, so I don't need a password. If you have a password whilst you are installing your XAMPP and they asked you for a password and then you inputted a password, you put the password here. Mine has no password. Okay. And then the name of the database that we want to connect. So the database that we want to connect, that's the DB name. I think the database was called Tax Manager. Yeah, so that's the name of our database, Tax Manager. And then, so this is the slight difference between what will happen with your own and mine. So I'm running multiple instances of MySQL. So I need to specify a port. So my port will be port 3307. Okay. If you are not running any multiple instance or you have not configured any port, you don't need this one. You don't need this. You don't need to add this one. The default port is 3306. So yeah, basically it's default. But if you are doing some configuration, you probably need to show the ports that you are connecting on. So yeah, so my port is 3306. Okay, so from there, I will try to make a connection between my system and the MySQL. So I'll start with try and then on for connection, new video. Okay. The MySQL, that's the host. $sign. Sorry. Server name. Port. So like I said, you don't need a port if you are not running any port. If you are running some port, you need a port. So if you are not running any port, you don't need to indicate the port. So you have port, you have the DB name, is equal to the DB name. And then you have the username, and then you have the password. Okay. Then you set an attribute. So this one usually it's this boilerplate code. So this comes with PHP by default and it's boilerplate code. For now, I don't think you need to know. You just have to put it in there and then yeah. Okay. And then since we are using a try, we need a catch. Okay. And then we are catching the PDO exception. and then we echo connection failed. And we get the message from, exception. Yeah. Then we get the message from the exception. Get message. Yeah. So basically, we are trying to create a connection between our system and the database. Okay. So from here, we will include our database into our index of PHP. So that we are including, basically we are copying all this code and then we are adding it here, but we want it to be elegant. So we are using the include keyword and then we are including our db.php. So if there is any error, we will know. If the connection was successful, we would also know. So if we reload, so connection failed, no connection could be made because the machine actively refused it. Okay, so it means there's a problem with the connection that we did. I do wrong. I have my host, that's the server name. Port, name, username and password. Okay. Trying to figure out what went wrong. Okay, let me try the second instance, this one. It's the same thing, right? That's my server name, my name. Try the connection again. So this time I connected. What was the difference? Okay, so I think I have a feeling the spaces between is so the spaces between the equal to and the server name. So basically don't keep spaces between the equal to and the variable names. Sorry, for some reason my Teams shut down. So yeah, so I was saying that don't keep a space between your variables and your the server name, the host, the ports, the DB name. Don't keep spaces between them. Okay, so now we have a connection between our database and our system because we have no error messages in here. Okay, so the next thing that we'll do is to basically create our index page. Okay, so for the sake of time, I already have the design going and everything. So I'd copy it and paste it, and then I'll kind of explain what is happening in there. Um, all right, cool. Okay, so Josie, create a global account. Okay. So, like I said, this is establishing a connection between our database and our system. And then I've included that into our index file. Okay. So I'm trying to establish a connection between like a select or to get the data from our database in the beginning. So if there's a connection, then prepare this statement, execute it, fetch all tags from our system. Because we are on the index page, and on the index page, we would want to get all the data and render the data. Okay. So if there is an error or anything, we will get failed to connect to database. Okay. So then we exit. And then this is my HTML. My HTML is basic HTML. So in my HTML, I have a container, a tax manager. I'm calling so I need a create file. I'm calling the create.php to add a PHP, which I didn't add. All right. Cool. So a create.php, that's adding my PHP. I have the ID, the title, the description, the status, and the actions. The actions are basically edit and delete. Okay. So up here, I'm fetching all the tags and I'm passing it into this tax variable. Okay, so that means that that tax variable becomes an array because I'm fetching it all the tags and I'm passing it inside. So we get an array of tags, and then I'm looping through that array of tags, and then for each tax that is in there, it should get the tax ID, the title, the description, the status, and then it should add the actions in there. Okay, so if we save it and then we reload our page, we have this. Okay, so basically it's very basic. Now, this is the CSS part of it. You can
Hello, sir.
extract this. Yeah, hello.
Oh, please, sorry for intervening, but I want to make
No
a quick
problem.
suggestion. Okay, I
Okay.
wanted to say, maybe the complicated part of the complication. I mean, the parts of the code which are very complicated. Could you just maybe probably comment that part so that maybe when we are going through, we would be able to um like get it like faster.
Okay, all right. So let me add
Okay,
comments in
thank you.
there. Right. So let's say basically. Okay, you know what? Before I share the code, we share the code, we'll add comments to it. So that it doesn't take time from the session. So before the code gets shared, we'll add comments to it. But for now, I'll
Okay,
just explain it so that you will understand.
thank you.
Right. So basically this place is making a connection to the database. And this is fetching the data from the database. So we are selecting start from tax, and then we are passing it into the tax variable. Okay, and then this is our style.css. So whilst implementing yours, you can design your own in any way that you'd want it. Yeah, basically. So this is what we have now. We have our ID, our title, description, status, and actions. So currently we have this add new tags, which is a link that calls the create.php. In the create.php currently we have nothing in there. So we will add that. Basically we would design our create.php. Okay. I don't think it's a lot of code. So let me do the HTML and then I'll copy the CSS and then I'll add its basic so that at least we'll have something going, some HTML code going. Okay, so one thing that I'll add here too is, because I'm still going to pass data into the database, I'll include my db.php file. So that's every file that I go, basically, or every page that I go, I'm establishing a connection between my database and my page. Okay. So in our create.php, I've included the database file. Okay. So from here, I'll add my HTML. So doc type is HTML. Let me capitalize them. All right. So doc type is HTML. And then I have my HTML body. Why is this highlighted? So I have my HTML tags. Okay, and then in there I have my head. And in my head I have my title. The title says add a new tags. Okay, and then the style will come here, which it's a lot, so I'll just copy it and then paste it in there later. Okay, so now we have our head. We go to our body. All right, so in our body, what we need, basically, we are trying to get this. So we need an HTML tag for this. We need we need two input fields and then one button. So I'll start with the tag. So I'd create a div. I give it a class of container because my style will have a class called container in there. Then I have my H1 that says add a new tags. Okay, from there, like I said, we need two input fields and one button. So basically we need a form. So I'll create the form. Okay, and then our method will be post. All right. Then in our form, we need a label. And then it's a label for our title. Call it title. Okay, and then we need an input, which is a type of text. And then the name of our input is title and is required. So, okay, so it's required. All right, so if I save it now, what do we have? Okay, so we have our add tags, we have our title in there. Okay, so the next thing that we need is the description. So I'll break it for now. Then I have another label for a description. For the description. All right, and then because it's a description, I'll create a text area. Name is description. And we don't need the ID and the column numbers. We can basically take them out. Now we have a text area called description. If we reload, okay, so now we have our description. Yeah, and then the final thing that we add is our button. Okay. And then our button type is of type submit. Okay, and add tags. And then I'll give it a class BTN. Okay, so what do we have now? Okay, so we have this, but there's no style to it. So basically, I'll copy the style from the previous one, and then I'll just paste the style in this. Okay, so let me copy this as well, and I'll explain it as we go on. So if I reload it, okay, so now we have this. So basically what I brought in here is I'm trying to check if the server request is a post. If it's a post, take the title, take the description, and then insert into the table the values, the title, and the description. So you'd see that when I was creating the labels, I did label for. Basically, it's a way for me to know what the title of this input is or what data it contains. Also, it has a name or title here. So it's easy for my PHP to know the name of what I am trying to put in there. So yeah. So I have label for title, and then the name of this field is title. And then I have label for description, and the name of this text area is also description. So when I'm calling title from the form, it knows exactly what title is, and then it knows exactly what description is. And then I have this statement, and the statement basically is inserting into the tax database the title and the description. So with this knowledge, you can also expand the things that you would want to insert into your database. But you need to have a name for that text field or input or checkbox or whatever that you put there. You need to have a name for it. And then you need to expand this as well. That's add other things that you want to add in there. And then yeah, you execute the statement. Now we have a header. The header says location index.php. So I'll explain it. So let's say our task is create page for tax. Description is a page to add tax must be created. Then we add the tags. So after we added the tags, you realize that it automatically sent us back to the index.php. So that's what this header location is doing. So when you are executing, or PHP is executing the code, after it inserts into the database, it executes the statement. It sees this header, and then it asks for a location, and then the location is index.php. So it takes us back to the index.php. Okay. So basically, we have 4 things to do. We have to create, read, update, and delete. So we have created the tags, we have added it into the database. So that's the create part of our job done. And then we are also getting the data that we added to our database. So the read part is also done, basically. All right. So we can add another tags. We'll say, so to even make it more interesting, we'll say create tags to be added to database. Say implement how tags can be created. Okay. Right. So we have that, and then we have update tags to be added. And then we say implement how to update our tags. Add, and then the final one is delete tags to be added. And then say implement how to delete tags. Okay, so currently we have create page for tags. That's like our read. And then we have create tags to be added to database. We have update tags, and then we have our delete tags. That's 4 things that we have to do. So we have our tags, we are reading our tags, and then we are creating our tags. Now, when we added the tags, the status automatically said pending. So the next thing that I would want to do is to update our status and change it to tags. I mean, completed. Okay, so that's the next thing that we would have to do. So currently, when we click on edit, we don't have any edit page. Okay, so the next thing that I would have to do is to edit our page. Did I name it edit, or I named it update? Okay, I named it edit. So let me update this one. Call it edit. All right. So yeah, so nothing changes. We still don't have any edit page. Okay. So in our edit page, which I don't think that one is also lots of code, we go through the same cycle again. We include our db.php. Once you get comfortable, you can have different ways that you don't have to include it all the time. But since we are now starting to learn, let's just go with, the more we do it, the more we become okay with doing this, the thing that we are doing. So we include our DB in there. Then the next thing we do is to create our HTML. So the same process that we went through the first time, we have our doc type, HTML. forget our exclamation. Okay, and then we have our HTML tags. Right. We have our head. So you realize that I don't add the forward and backslash because I think when you are using Visual Studio Code and PHP Storm, when you type something and you hit tab, it will complete it for you. So that's what I'm doing so that it goes faster for me. So inside my head, I have my title. And then my title says edit tags. Okay. And then I have my style. Which I'll go and copy because there's a lot of code to write in the style. So from there, I have the body. And then inside my body, I have a div that has a class container. So the shorthand for class is dot. So you create a div and then you do a dot container. If you want, so yeah, so it created a container for me. If you want an ID, you do a pound sign and then you do container and then you have an ID. So yeah, so we have a div with a class of container. And inside our div, we have H1. So basically we are repeating the same steps again. H1 that says edit tags. Okay, and then we have another form, which is almost the same thing as what we had, but instead of copy pasting, let's type it again. This post, and then we have a label for title. Then we have our input field, the type of text, and then the name is title. So basically the same thing again. Break, we have another label for description. And then we call it description. Okay, we have an input. Use a text area. Okay, the name is description. Yeah, so that's it. And for this time around, we will add and we'll introduce a new thing. Label, we call it status. And it's to select. Okay, and then name is status. Okay, and the status, they take options. So our option, we have value called pending. That's the enum that we created in our system. So the value is pending, call it pending. And then we have another one called completed. Them completed. Okay, so yeah, let me save and let's see what we have now. Oh, sorry. So, sorry, for some reason my Teams getting shut down. I don't know why, but it keeps getting shut down. So, yeah, so we have that now. And then the next thing that we have, we have our button that says update task. Okay, we give it the type of submit, and then we give it a class btn. Okay, so currently, what do we have? Okay, so this is what we have. Our select is here. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is to add our CSS, which edit. Let's go ahead and copy this, and then paste it here. Okay, so now we have this. And yeah, we go back to copying our PHP code again. That's okay. So the same thing that is happening. I think I left the header out. Did I? Yeah, I did. Okay, so the same thing that is happening, we are checking if our method is a post request. We are getting the title, the description, and the status. We are running this select statement. We are updating our tags. We are setting the title to title, description to description, status to status, where ID is equal to ID. Okay. So yeah, so basically the same thing that we were doing then, we are doing now. I have an issue. Okay, this is the issue. Okay, so yeah, so now we have this. If I reload, go back, I'm in the tags. No, tags not updating. Sorry, forgot to add this. Yeah. So, like I said, I'll comment it all to explain what it is doing before. Yeah. Let's go back, edit. So my tax is supposed to update. Oh, okay. So yeah. So so one thing that I forgot to add was that because we are going to edit the fields, so currently it will be best if when we came here, these ones are pre-populated for us so that we don't have to retype it again. So one thing that is happening is I'm getting the ID of the tax, the ID is 1, and then I'm selecting from the tax to get I'm selecting from the tax table to get the tax which has the ID of the tax that we currently are. So that's ID is 1. So I'm selecting the tax table to get the tax which has the ID of 1. Okay. And now what I want to do is, because I wanted to pre-populate when the page loads. Okay. So because I wanted to pre-populate when the page loads, I'll set the value. So the value of this field, HTML field, I'll set the value to is equal to HTML special characters. So I'm doing that so that I'll be able to pass in the PHP code inside my HTML. So title, tax, which has the title, the value of the title, right? And then I'm still in the value. Let me go. I'll make it required. Forgot to add a required. Okay, so if I reload it, yeah. So now instead of us typing in the title again, we'd want to get the title and then pre-populate it for us when we come in. Okay, so the value of the text field, I'm passing it as the value of the tax that we got here. So when we fetch the data, we got a tax. So that tax, I'm storing it in this variable, and I'm calling the title of the text in the tax. Okay. I think I can do something like this. I want to echo tax. Let me do it here. So if I echo tax, I believe it's supposed to, okay, so I have to for each it, but if I echo tax title, yeah, so we have our title. If I echo the description, we have our description. Okay. So basically what I want to do is I want to use this to pre-populate my fields. So HTML special characters, I got the value for this. And basically it's the same for the description. I'll type it and then the next one I will leave it. Okay, so I have my question mark. All right. So if I want to write PHP, basically I'll start with the question mark and then I'll end with the question mark. So HTML special characters, the same process, the tags. I want to get the description from the tags. Yeah. And I reload it. Didn't get the description. Oh, sorry. It's a text box. It doesn't have the value. Yeah. So I have the page, the title. I also have the description in there. Okay. So from here, we have the pending and then the completed. So I'll purposely leave this part out of it for you to implement. So the idea is when you get the data, currently, if I echo tax status. It says pending. Okay, fine. Now if I update it, it brings us back here. It has been updated. It says completed. So basically our code works. But when we load and we come back, we see completed here, but it says pending here. So I'll leave that task to you so that when the page loads and the page says completed, when you have updated the data and the data is completed, this part says completed. And when the data is pending, this part says pending. So I'll leave that one out of it. It's not difficult to implement. You just have to, I'll leave that one. You implement it yourself. So yeah, so now we have our tax, which we updated to complete it. But now when we update, we go back to pending. Then when we update it, completed. So basically we have completed the create page. That's reading the data. We have completed, we have completed the reading of the data. Now we have completed the creating of the data, so we can edit it and we say completed. We have completed the update of the data. Like I'm saying, the pending part, this part. So for example, I think this is this is my own create tax. Implement create tax. Okay, so now create tax. When we update it to completed, we save, it says completed. When we come back to edit it, it says completed. So that part is where I'll leave it for you to handle yourself. Yeah. So now we have done the create page, the edit page, that's the update page. Yeah, the create, the read, the update. So okay, so this part has been completed. So the final thing we'd have to do is to delete the data. Basically, delete the data. And the delete is straightforward, is very simple. So we have our include again, including the database. Okay. Then what we do is we will get the ID of the data we want to delete. So our ID, if I can find my report. So our ID is getting the ID. We are going to run a statement. So we prepare our statement. And our statement basically is to delete from the tax. It's a tax with an X. I think it's a tax with an S. So we delete from the tax where the ID is equal to the ID that we got. So we delete from the tax where the ID is equal to the ID of the current data we want to delete. Okay. So from there, we bind our statement. the IDs with that's this ID. We are saying when the code sees this ID, it is basically this ID that we declared here. Then we execute the statement. Then we go back to our index.php. That's our home page. Okay, so when I reload, I update, delete tags, I update it, and I delete it. Say, are you sure? And then basically it's deleted. So yeah, so that's our full CRUD application done. Okay, so our full CRUD application done. We can create as much as delete this later, attacks, update it, and say forgot to add description. Yeah, then we delete it. So basically that's our CRUD application done and dusted. So to summarize what we did, we created an index page which selects all the tags that we have in our system, selects all the tags that we have in our system, stores the tags in an array, and then we get the tags, we populate our table with the tags in there. We have two actions. We have our edit action and then our delete action. Our edit action calls our edit.php file. Our delete action calls our delete.php file. Okay. So we also have a create, let's say create hyperlink, which calls our create.php file. When we go into our create.php file, we created a form. Inside our form, we have a title, and then we have a description. And then we have a submit button. Okay. And then the method of our form is a post method. That's basically we are sending something to the database. Okay. And then we check if we are creating a post request. If we are, we get the title from our form, we get the description for our form, we prepare a statement to run. Basically say, when you see this title, it's our title variable we created here. When you see this description, is our description we created here. Execute the statement, go to our home page. All right. And then inside our edit, we basically get the ID of the current tags that we have clicked on. Then we fetch all the data of that current tags. We created a form again. We have a title and then we have a description. And then inside our title, we are populating the data of the tags that we fetched initially. Inside our description, we are also doing the same, populating the data of the description we fetched initially. We introduce a drop-down that has pending and completed in there. So that those are the things that we are using to update our tags basically. And then we have a submit button. And when we click the submit, we check whether it's a post request. We get the title, the description, and the status. we update our tags with the data that we just created. Then we go back to our home. Okay. And then we have our delete. Delete gets the ID of the tags that we clicked on, prepares a delete statement. It executes the statement. It takes us back home to our index.php. And then we have our database connection. So this is our server name, our root, our password, our database name, and our port. Like I said, if you are not doing any configurations on your port, you don't need this part of it. But if you are, I believe you know what you are doing already. So yeah. So then we try to establish a connection between ourselves and our database with these attributes here. And then when we get an error, so we are trying to establish a connection. When we get an error, it should print the error and tell us the message of the error. So yeah, so basically our project is done and dusted. So I'll comment it out and then share with Caleb, and then I think you also share with all of us. So if there are any questions, you can go on and ask at this point.
Hey, Tony, this is
Please,
awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Era, please go ahead.
I was asking that when you are creating the database, the how do you call it? Query or say query, I don't know. The query
The
that
query,
you does it yes, that one. Does it
yeah.
automatically create the database for you, or you have to like manually input the data into the table?
Okay, so the query for creating the database, I think it's gone back. Okay. So basically, the creating of the database does not input data into the database for you. It only creates the database. The inputting of the data is done through these fields. Okay. Where we enter something here and we hit update or submit, right? We are running this statement to automatically insert that data that we typed into the database for us. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, your answer is thank you very much.
Okay. So any other question? So I think I'll then stop sharing and then I think
Yeah, Tony, thank you so much. We are grateful for your time, and to everyone for joining. We are thankful. So Tony's contact is on the flyer. So if you feel like there is anything you want to follow up with him, feel free to connect with him. We are all available to support, help everyone to understand, I mean, these courses together, right? So feel free to reach out to Tony at any time. If you get stuck, just reach out to him and he will support. So thanks everyone. We are planning other PLS. Definitely we're going to have Sunday, which is a constant day for the courses. We will see if we could do some within the weekend. I'm sorry, during the week we will try. It looks like we might also need to take a session on SQL, MySQL particularly, right? Last week I had planned one, but that couldn't come off. So we might also take one so that it clears up a few things there for us. Yeah, so we're going to share the recording as well. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy your week.
Bye.
Thank you too.